Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. All right, settle in, folks. Grab a coffee, maybe something stronger if it's that time of day for you. What I'm about to share, well, it still makes my head spin a little even now. And believe me, at 52, after nearly 20 years navigating the corporate maze at Sterling Solutions, not much truly throws me off balance anymore. You think you've seen it all, right? The promotions, the reorganizations, the office politics that could rival anything on Capitol Hill. But this was different. My name's Eleanor, Ellie to most people who aren't signing my paychecks. I'm a senior project manager, good at my job, reliable, maybe a bit predictable. I like things orderly. My desk is usually neat. Photos of my 2 grown kids, Sarah and Ben, tucked neatly beside my monitor, pens in their holder, coaster for my ever-present mug of Earl Grey. The office itself is pretty standard issue. Endless rows of cubicles under those buzzing fluorescent lights that always seem to give everything a slightly sickly, greenish hue. You know the type. Beige walls, slightly worn gray carpet, the distant hum of the HVAC system. Comfortably numb, you might call it. My boss, David Miller, well, he's the CEO. Not some middle manager, the top dog. He's maybe 10 years older than me, always impeccably dressed, sharp eyes, doesn't waste words. Commands respect, you know. He's not unfriendly, exactly, just contained, professional to a fault. We have cordial interactions, project updates, strategic meetings, the usual. Nothing that would ever hint at what was coming. He's always been Mr. Sterling, formal, focused, his personal life a complete enigma wrapped in a tailored suit. So, picture this. It was a Tuesday, not even a Friday afternoon when weird things sometimes happen. Just a regular, gray, slightly drizzly Tuesday in late October. The kind of day where the clock seems to actively mock you, ticking slower with each passing minute after lunch. I was neck-deep in the quarterly budget projections, juggling spreadsheets that looked like complex alien hieroglyphics. My brain felt like lukewarm oatmeal. Most people had already started packing up. The usual end-of-day sounds were beginning, the soft zip of laptop bags, the clatter of keys being dropped into purses, muted goodbyes. I was planning on another 30 minutes, maybe an hour, just to get a handle on these numbers before facing the commute home. That's when I saw him. David, standing near the edge of my cubicle. That alone was unusual. He rarely ventured out into the main bullpen unless it was for a specific, announced reason. Usually, you got summoned to his office, the corner one with the actual view and the fancy espresso machine. He just stood there for a moment, looking not at me, exactly, but sort of towards my general area. He cleared his throat softly. "Eleanor," he said. His voice was lower than usual, quieter. I looked up, blinking, trying to shift gears from budget hell to CEO interaction. "Yes, David." I automatically straightened my posture. Old habits. "Could you spare a few minutes? When you're ready to wrap up?" My internal alert system immediately went to DEFCON 3. Budget cuts, layoffs. Did I screw something up monumentally? My mind raced through the past few weeks. Had I missed a deadline? Was there a complaint? You know how it is. Your brain instantly conjures the worst-case scenarios. Of course, I managed, trying to keep my voice even. I was just finishing up here. Give me 5 minutes. He nodded, a quick, jerky movement. "My office, then. If you would." And then he turned and walked back towards the executive corridor, his footsteps unnervingly quiet on the worn carpet. Okay, now the anxiety really kicked in. This wasn't a casual swing by my office kind of thing. This felt heavy. I quickly saved my spreadsheet, my fingers feeling thick and clumsy on the keyboard. I gathered my purse, shut down my computer, the usual motions feeling robotic. My heart was doing a weird little tap dance against my ribs. Walking down that hallway towards his office felt longer than usual. The plush carpet muffled my steps, making it eerily silent. The lighting seemed dimmer here, warmer, less institutional. Polished wood, abstract art on the walls, the markers of the executive tier. His door was slightly ajar. I tapped lightly. "Come in, Eleanor." I pushed the door open and stepped inside. His office was large, meticulously organized. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline, raindrops streaking down the glass, blurring the lights below into watercolor smudges. He wasn't behind his imposing mahogany desk, which was another deviation from the norm. He was standing near the window, looking out, his back partially to me. He gestured towards the 2 leather armchairs arranged perpendicular to his desk, near a low coffee table. "Please, have a seat." I sat, perching on the edge of the plush chair, my purse clutched tightly in my lap. The leather felt cool against my hands. The room smelled faintly of wood polish and that expensive coffee he favored. He turned from the window, and that's when I noticed it. He looked tired, not just end-of-day tired, but something deeper. There were lines around his eyes I hadn't registered before, and his usually perfect posture seemed a fraction less rigid. He ran a hand through his salt and pepper hair, another uncharacteristic gesture. He looked nervous. My boss, the unflappable CEO, looked genuinely nervous. He sat down in the chair opposite me, leaning forward slightly, his hands clasped loosely between his knees. He didn't immediately speak, just held my gaze for a moment. It wasn't intimidating, like usual. It was searching. Vulnerable? I couldn't quite place it. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken tension. The only sound was the faint hiss of the rain against the window. My mind was still racing. What is going on? Finally, he took a deep breath. The sound loud in the quiet room. "Eleanor," he began again, his voice barely above a whisper. "There's something personal I need to tell you. Something I haven't discussed with anyone else here." My breath caught in my throat. Personal? From David Miller? This was already unbelievable. My carefully constructed world of spreadsheets and project timelines felt like it was tilting on its axis. I just nodded, unable to form words, waiting for whatever bombshell was about to drop. What he said next? Well, that's where things went completely off the rails. So there I was, perched on the edge of that expensive leather armchair, heart thumping like a drum against my ribs, waiting. The air in David's office felt thick, charged with something. Anticipation? Dread? I honestly couldn't tell. The rain outside continued its soft percussion against the glass, a steady rhythm against the uncertainty hanging between us. David looked down at his clasped hands for a long moment, as if gathering his thoughts, or maybe his courage. When he looked back up, his eyes met mine directly. That professional mask he always wore was gone. Completely. What I saw instead was raw vulnerability, a touch of weariness, and something else. Was it hope? "Eleanor," he said, his voice still quiet but firmer now. "For the past 30 years, my life has been Sterling Solutions. Building it, growing it, managing it. It's been everything." He paused, gesturing vaguely around the plush office. This. The meetings, the deals, the pressure. It defines me. Or rather, he corrected himself, a wry twist to his lips. It's what people think defines me. I nodded slowly, still unsure where this was going, but listening intently. That much was true. David Miller was sterling solutions in everyone's eyes, including mine. He leaned back slightly, though his posture remained tense. But there's something else. Something I've kept completely separate. Compartmentalized. He hesitated again, searching for the right words. I'd write, he said finally, the word hanging in the air between us. You write, I echoed, blinking. Like reports? Memus? It sounded lame even as I said it, but my brain was struggling to connect David Miller, CEO, with writer. A small, almost shy smile touched his lips. No, not reports. I write poetry. Poetry. I just stared at him. If he told me he moonlighted as a rodeo clown, I might have been less surprised. David Miller. The man who could dissect a balance sheet with surgical precision, who negotiated multi-million-dollar contracts without breaking a sweat. Poetry. The contrast was staggering. It felt like discovering your stern, practical math teacher secretly painted watercolor fairies. He seemed to read the disbelief on my face because he gave a short, self-deprecating laugh. I know. It doesn't exactly fit the image, does it? No, I admitted honestly. No, it really doesn't. I mean, wow, David. Poetry. It started in college. He continued, seeming to relax slightly now that the initial confession was out. Just dabbling. Then life got busy. Career, family, all of it. But I never stopped entirely. It became a release. A way to process things. To see the world differently than I have to in this chair. He gestured towards his imposing desk. He looked out the window again, at the rain-streaked cityscape. For years, it's been my secret. My wife knew, of course, before she passed. He mentioned her passing briefly, a shadow crossing his face, but he didn't dwell on it. But no one here, no one in my professional life. It felt incompatible. Weak, maybe? Certainly not something a CEO is supposed to spend his time on. My mind was reeling, trying to reconcile the image of the powerful executive with this hidden, sensitive side. A poet. Suddenly, fleeting moments from the past clicked into place, an unusual turn of phrase in a meeting, a thoughtful observation that seemed slightly out of character, a certain depth in his gaze sometimes when he thought no one was looking. Why? Why are you telling me this, David? I asked softly, the question hanging heavy in the quiet room. And why now? He turned his gaze back to me, and the intensity was startling. Because, he said slowly, deliberately, I've been submitting some of my work. Under a pseudonym, obviously. And, well, a small, respected literary journal wants to publish a collection. A chapbook. David, that's wonderful. I exclaimed, genuinely impressed, and frankly touched that he was sharing this. Congratulations. That's huge. He nodded, but his expression was troubled. It is. And I want to do it. I really do. But it means acknowledging it. More publicly. Even under a pseudonym, it feels like a step out of the shadows. And honestly, Eleanor, he leaned forward again, his voice dropping lower. I'm thinking about stepping back. Not immediately, but planning for it. Maybe transitioning out of the CEO role over the next couple of years. That was the unbelievable part. David Miller leaving Sterling Solutions? It seemed inconceivable. The company was his lifeblood. Stepping back, I repeated, stunned. "This," he said, gesturing between us, "this impending publication. It's forced me to confront what I actually want for the next phase of my life. Do I want to keep grinding until I drop, or do I want to explore this other part of myself? The part I've kept hidden away for so long." He looked at me intently. "And I'm telling you, Eleanor, because I trust you. I've always valued your judgment, your discretion. You're grounded, you're perceptive. You see things others don't." And he added, a faint smile returning, "You don't strike me as someone who would laugh at a CEO who writes poetry." I felt a warmth spread through my chest, a surprising sense of connection to this man I thought I knew, but clearly didn't. He saw me not just as a subordinate, a cog in his machine, but as a person he could confide in, someone whose reaction mattered on a personal level. "No, David," I said softly. "I wouldn't laugh. I think it's amazing. Truly." We sat in silence for another moment. The dynamic between us irrevocably shifted. He wasn't just my boss anymore. He was a man grappling with a profound life decision, revealing a hidden facet of his soul. The sterile office suddenly felt intimate, a pocket of quiet confession amidst the corporate hustle. The rain continued to fall, washing the city lights into blurry constellations outside the window. And I had a feeling that my predictable, orderly world had just been fundamentally, and perhaps wonderfully, rearranged. Saying amazing felt like a colossal understatement, but honestly, my brain was still buffering, trying to process the image of David Miller, the titan of industry, hunched over a notebook scribbling verses. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, not like before. It was contemplative, filled with the weight of his confession and the surprising lightness of it being spoken aloud, maybe for the first time in this context. The rain outside had softened to a drizzle, and the city lights beyond the glass seemed sharper now, pinpricks of yellow and white against the deepening twilight sky. David let out a long breath, the tension visibly easing from his shoulders. It was like watching a statue soften just a little around the edges. "Thank you, Eleanor," he said, his voice regaining some of its usual timbre, but retaining that newfound warmth. "That means more than you know." I found myself leaning back in the plush armchair, mirroring his slightly more relaxed posture. My initial shock was morphing into a complex mix of emotions: genuine respect for his hidden passion, empathy for the vulnerability he'd shown, and I'll admit, a flicker of intrigue. Who was this man, really? After nearly 2 decades working under the same roof, it felt like I was meeting him for the first time. So, I began hesitantly, not wanting to pry, but intensely curious. This pseudonym and the chapbook. What kind of poetry do you write? If you don't mind me asking. Another one of those small, surprising smiles. You can ask, Eleanor, though describing it is difficult. It's not boardroom stuff, I can tell you that. He paused, thinking. Observations, mostly. Moments. The way light falls on an old building, the feeling of walking alone in the city early in the morning, the echoes of things past. His gaze drifted back to the window, trying to find the meaning, or maybe just the beauty, in the ordinary things we rush past every day. I could picture it, and strangely, it fit. That quiet intensity he sometimes had, the way he could focus entirely on a single point in a presentation, maybe that same focus applied to capturing fleeting moments in words. It sounds beautiful, I offered sincerely. It's necessary, he replied simply. For me, anyway, a counterbalance. He looked back at me. Which brings me back to why I'm telling you. This transition, if I decide to go through with it, it won't be simple. Sterling Solutions needs stability. It needs a steady hand. And frankly, he sighed, I need someone within the company I can trust implicitly as I navigate this. Someone who understands the business, but who also gets it. Gets this. He gestured vaguely, encompassing the unspoken confession, the poetry, the potential life change. My heart gave another little jump. Was he asking for help? Advice? It felt surreal. I was a senior project manager. Good at my job, yes, but hardly in the inner circle of succession planning or high-level corporate strategy. David, I'm flattered you feel you can trust me, I said carefully. And anything I can do to help, of course, I will. Though I'm not sure what that would entail. He waved a hand dismissively. Nothing concrete right now. It's more having an ally, someone who knows the full picture. Someone I can perhaps bounce ideas off, not just about the business, but about this other path. Does that make sense? It does. I nodded. It felt like being inducted into a secret society, albeit one with only 2 members. The CEO and the project manager, the poet and the confidant. He seemed relieved. Good, good. He fell silent again, tapping a finger against the arm of his chair. The office was quiet except for the low hum of the building systems and the distant sound of a siren wailing somewhere down in the city streets. Then he did something even more unexpected. He leaned forward slightly, a hesitant look on his face. Would you? I mean, it's probably presumptuous, but would you be interested in reading something? Just a short piece. My eyes widened slightly. He wanted me to read his poetry. Now? Yes, I stammered, surprised but also deeply curious. Yes, David, I'd be honored. He reached over to the low coffee table between us, where a slim, well-worn leather-bound notebook lay half hidden beneath a financial report. I hadn't even noticed it before. He picked it up almost reverently, his fingers tracing the faded gold lettering on the cover. Just initials, D.G.A.M. He flipped through a few pages, his brow furrowed in concentration, then paused. He didn't hand it to me. Instead, he cleared his throat softly, and in a low, quiet voice, completely different from his usual commanding boardroom tone, he began to read. It wasn't long, maybe 10 lines. It was about the city at dawn, the quiet anticipation before the rush, the first rays of sun hitting the glass towers. His voice wasn't performative, just simple, letting the words speak for themselves. And they did. They painted a picture so vivid, so evocative, I could almost smell the damp pavement and feel the cool morning air. It was surprisingly poignant, capturing a sense of solitude and quiet beauty that resonated deeply with me, someone who often felt lost in the daily corporate shuffle. When he finished, he looked up, his expression guarded, searching my face for a reaction. The air crackled with a different kind of tension now, the vulnerability of an artist sharing their creation. My opinion suddenly felt incredibly important. David, I said, my voice a little thick with emotion. That was really lovely. Truly, you have a gift. A slow smile spread across his face, reaching his eyes this time. It transformed him, making him look younger, less burdened. Thank you, Eleanor, he murmured. Thank you. He closed the notebook gently. The moment felt pivotal, a line crossed. We had shared something real, something far removed from spreadsheets and profit margins. He had shown me a hidden part of his soul, and I had, I hoped, received it with the respect it deserved. He glanced at the clock on his desk. Goodness, look at the time. I've kept you incredibly late, Eleanor. I apologize. Not at all, I said quickly, standing up as he did. The spell was partially broken, the roles of CEO and employee filtering back in, but the underlying connection remained. Thank you again, he said, walking me towards the door. For listening. For understanding. Anytime, David, I replied, meeting his gaze. He opened the door for me, and as I stepped out into the quiet, dimly lit hallway, he said one more thing, his voice low and carrying a hint of intrigue. There's something else, Eleanor. Something I was hoping we could discuss. Perhaps outside of the office. My steps faltered. Outside the office? What now? The unbelievable, it seemed, was far from over. Outside the office. The words slipped out before I could stop them, tinged with surprise. My mind, still processing the poetry and the potential CEO departure, struggled to grasp this new curveball. What else could there possibly be? David offered a reassuring, albeit slightly weary, smile. Nothing alarming, Eleanor, I promise. Just a conversation better had away from these walls. He gestured vaguely around the executive corridor. Perhaps coffee sometime later this week, or a quiet lunch if you prefer. The invitation felt both momentous and completely natural after the intimacy of our conversation. This wasn't my CEO asking for a meeting. It felt like David asking Ellie. Coffee would be fine, I heard myself say, a strange sense of calm settling over me. The initial anxiety had evaporated, replaced by a profound curiosity, and if I'm being honest, a sense of quiet importance. Thursday morning, maybe? Before the rush? Perfect, he agreed, nodding. There's a little place, the Daily Grind, a few blocks over on Maple Street. Relatively quiet around 8. I know it. 8 o'clock on Thursday works for me. Excellent. Thank you again, Eleanor. For everything. His gaze held mine for a beat longer than strictly professional, filled with an unspoken gratitude that resonated deeply. Good night, David, I said softly. Good night, Ellie. Hearing him use my nickname felt like sealing a pact, acknowledging the shift between us. I walked back through the now almost deserted office floor, the usual rows of dark monitors and empty chairs seeming different tonight. The fluorescent lights still buzzed, the carpet was still gray, but my perspective had changed. The predictable landscape of my work life suddenly held a secret garden, revealed by the most unlikely person. The next day and a half passed in a blur of normal work, meetings, emails, spreadsheets, yet nothing felt quite normal. I saw David briefly in a management meeting. He was his usual commanding self, sharp and focused, dissecting quarterly reports with precision. But I saw him differently now. I noticed the way his fingers drummed silently on the table when someone else was speaking, the slight tilt of his head as he listened, the fleeting moments his gaze seemed distant, perhaps composing a line of poetry in his head. Our eyes met once across the polished table, a quick, almost imperceptible flicker of shared understanding before we both looked away. It was our secret, hidden in plain sight. Thursday morning arrived, crisp and bright, a welcome change from Tuesday's drizzle. I felt a flutter of nerves walking the few blocks to the Daily Grind, smoothing down my blazer. It wasn't a date, obviously, but it felt significant nonetheless. The cafe was cozy, filled with the rich aroma of roasting coffee beans and the low murmur of early morning patrons. Exposed brick walls, mismatched wooden tables, local art displayed haphazardly, a world away from sterling solutions. I spotted David already seated at a small table in the corner, nursing a black coffee, gazing out the window. He wasn't wearing his usual power suit, but a simple, well-cut charcoal sweater and dark trousers. He looked approachable, human. He saw me and stood up, a welcoming smile on his face. "Ellie, thanks for coming." "Morning, David," I replied, sliding into the chair opposite him. I ordered my usual Earl Grey from the passing server. For a few moments, we just sat, the comfortable silence punctuated by the clatter of ceramic mugs and the hiss of the espresso machine. "So," I began gently, "what was it you wanted to discuss?" He took a slow sip of his coffee before answering. "It's about this transition," he said, his voice low. "The potential stepping back, and the poetry." He leaned forward slightly, his expression earnest. "The thing is, Eleanor, stepping away from Sterling isn't just a logistical challenge, it's an emotional one. It's been my identity for so long. And this other part," he tapped the side of his head, "the writer. I've never allowed him any real space in my public life. The chapbook feels like the first step, but it's daunting." He paused, looking directly at me. "What I wanted to ask you, outside the office, is if you'd be willing, occasionally, to be a sounding board, not just for business continuity plans, which we'll eventually need to discuss formally, but for this. For navigating how to integrate these two parts of my life, or how to gracefully move from one to the other. Someone who knows both sides now. Your perspective. I find I value it immensely. It wasn't about asking me to co-pilot the company or make earth-shattering decisions. It was simpler, and yet somehow more profound. He was asking for a trusted confidant, someone to witness and perhaps offer gentle guidance on his personal journey of reinvention. It was a request built entirely on the